Time for the tracks in my ears. Chosen this week by Andy McCluskey of OMD. And first, it's a track from the Beatles. Thank you, girl.
Well, I felt we should start with that one because that's probably my earliest memories of listening to music. My mum was a big music fan and we had a mono dance set in the lounge, and I can remember stacks of 7-inch singles, a lot of them black with a silver 45 parlophone on, and
yes,
Beatles records. And 'cause I didn't know the difference between an A-side and a B-side, but Thank You Girl, which I think was a B-side of what I don't know was on the A-side, that was my favourite Beatles song when I was like 5 years old, and it's stuck with me. It's still my favourite Beatles song.
It's amazing how these songs do stick with you, aren't they? And a lot of people will say, oh yeah, I remember that now, having heard it, but they couldn't have told you either, you know, the title or which year, or as you can't, or I can't, which B-side it was of.
Yeah, so that's my kind of earliest musical memory, so it seems logical to start there.
A lovely one. And this must also be one, the Tornadoes and Telstar.
Well, interestingly enough, because, you know, we're remembered as being a sort of 80s synth band, and we've always credited Kraftwerk as being our heroes and inspiration. But when I sort of cast my mind back, of course, Telstar by the Tornadoes was one of the first ever hit singles that had synthesizers on it, and it was such a radical record at the time. I loved it as a kid, and in fact it was the one and only cover version that OMD used to play in the very early days. Even before we were signed, we actually used to play Telstar on stage.
Yeah. And of course, Joe Meek, who was the producer behind this was all done in his house in the Holloway Road, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, an electronics genius from the music industry, and so it's a tribute to the man's genius.
It's the Tornadoes and Telstar. Chosen by Andy McCluskey. Andy McCluskey of OMD is choosing them. The first one he wants today, it's Roxy Music and Pyjamarama. BBC Radio 2.
I suppose I am a child of the 70s. The most influential musical time for me was the 70s. And I have to say, I only have a handful of heroes, but they were absolutely important to me, and Roxy Music were one of my fave bands. I didn't get into them until a few years after they'd started, because I think when they first started in '72 with Virginia Plain, I was 12, so it was only sort of when I was about 15 or 16, so I had to do a bit of catching up, and my favourite single by them is Pyjamarama. I just love that long intro with the great.
And of course Brian Ferry famously just had everything, didn't he? Really, he just had the look, he had the sound, he had everything.
He was very cool, and his voice was fabulous, but don't tell him, but I was an Eno fan.
Oh, okay. Your secret is now safe with us. No. It'll go no further. Be sure of that.
Actually, I've met Brian Ferry for the first time ever in January just recently. It was, and do you know what? How old is he? 61?
Oh, he's over 60.
He looks great.
Yes.
I hate him.
It's sickening,
He
isn't
looks
it?
younger than me.
Absolutely sickening. Joy Division are next with Atmosphere.
Well, of course, when we first started playing, the first ever concert we ever played, which was supposed to be a one-off. I mean, you're really not aspiring to have a career with a stupid name like Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark. We played in a punk club in Liverpool in 1978, and we supported this band from Manchester called Joy Division. And then we signed to Factory Records, and we did concerts with them. So obviously got to know them from the early days, and this particular song is just, I think it was the first time I ever heard them using big synthesizers, and it's so beautiful. I mean, Atmosphere is one of my favourite ever songs of all time.
Joy Division. Andy McCluskey of OMD is choosing them. And it's David Bowie and Starman first today. BBC Radio 2.
Well, I suppose from the 70s, David Bowie, for me, was probably the one individual who I was really knocked out by. I love the work he obviously did in the mid to late 70s with Brian Eno, but I was one of those kids watching Top of the Pops when Dave Lee Travis went, "Get a load of this," and cut to Bowie and his band, and yeah, I was 12 and I went, Whoa! So, yeah, Starman by David Bowie.
And his songs, although they were, by any standards, a little odd, they always had tremendous hooks. There was always one great section that you could always remember.
Well, the bottom line is that, you know, I think people are always trying to come up with something new and a new style and a new set of clothes or a new haircut. But ultimately, you can do as much as you want to be new. But if you haven't got a tune, you're not going very far.
And he had them. Now, you mentioned earlier in the week your influences by Kraftwerk, and here they are with Autobahn. So, how important was that?
Well, if I tell you that in 1975 I heard Autobahn and I went to see Kraftwerk, and I can remember that I sat in seat Q36 at the Liverpool Empire, it was the first day of the rest of my life. It was the height of, you know, long hair and flared denims and lead guitar solos, and these four guys came out in suits and ties playing electronic tea trays, it looked to me, with electronic knitting needles, and I just sat there and went, that is what I am going to do. And Autobahn, to a 16-year-old kid from Liverpool who was weaning himself off the Beatles by then and looking for something that was mine, I wanted to be different. I found it.
Autobahn by Kraftwerk. Andy McCluskey, WOMD. BBC Radio 2. He wants the Arctic Monkeys and Riot Van.
So rolls a riot van and sparks excitement.
Yes! I thought, can I get Ken Bruce to play an Arctic Monkeys track? Will Radio 2 go for it?
Of course we will. Cutting edge. Yeah.
Well, actually, I mean, much as they're known for all their thrashy energy, this is one of their softer, more mellow tracks, but still lyrically so beautifully observed. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners would never think of listening to the Arctic Monkeys in a million years, but I think they'll be enchanted by this song. It's lyrically so well observed, a lot of humour and pathos, and maybe because I'm a little old, it's actually my favourite song on their first album.
You've educated our listeners into not judging the Arctic Monkeys by their reputation. Well done, well done. And it's Ms Dynamite next. You see, you're down with the kids, really, aren't you, at the moment? And Dynamite.
I think one of the things that I've been fortunate with is that sort of 11 years ago when I hung up my microphone, I didn't retire to my ivory tower and sit there going, well, this modern stuff's rubbish, not like my day. I've been writing songs, creating bands, running a studio, so I like to think I've been sort of kept my ears open, and I just absolutely love Ms Dynamite when she first came out, and I know that she actually thinks this is a terribly cheesy song and has gone off it now, but I'm sorry, we're going to play it again.
Yeah, it's still good. I mean, she may not like it, but we do. Great. Well, we still like it, even for Andy McCluskey. And final two choices. Sunday Morning from the Velvet Underground. BBC Radio 2.
This really is probably the last of my kind of big 70s influences. We've talked about Roxy music and Brian Eno and David Bowie and obviously Kraftwerk. My other favourite band when I was a teenager was the Velvet Underground, obviously Lou Reed. And they did an album for Andy Warhol where they got sultry German songstress Nico in. And although, again, there's a lot of thrashing and a lot of kind of early punk stuff that they did some gorgeous tracks, and the feel and the sound of this song Sunday Morning is, you know, how we all often feel on a Sunday morning after a heavy Saturday night.
Oh, I don't know, but you tell me, I'll believe you. Okay, and finally, Hawkwind Silver Machine.
Yeah, my one nod to 70s hippie excess, because before I discovered Kraftwerk, I did have long hair and flared trousers, and I was a bit of a hippie. And I went to the Cardiff Castle Festival in 75, and I saw Hawkwind. I thought they were great. I got into Kraftwerk about 2 months afterwards and abandoned it all, but I still love this song.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song, no doubt about it. And so, as you were saying, you're back out doing it again, having taken a back seat for a few years. You now have the urge to get back on stage.
Yes, and I'm really excited. Paul and I did some concerts in Germany with a big orchestra in December, which kind of broke the ice, because I hadn't actually sung live into a microphone in front of an audience for 13 years, so I was nervous to say the least, but I got over that now. And yeah, we weren't sure what people would think. We booked 12 European dates, and the tour has now expanded to 38 and counting. And once we decided, Paul Humphreys and I and the other guys, that we'd get together and play again, it's just started snowballing. We started having more ideas, and the London Philharmonic approached us, which was very flattering. So there's some workshops with them, and we hope we're going to tour with those next year. I've got an art installation for the Liverpool Capital of Culture in 08. There's stuff going on now, which is really exciting. So it's very dangerous when you unretire yourself. You never know what you're letting yourself in for.
Because the easy thing to do would just be to play the back catalogue, but you're not doing that. You're looking forward. That's the thing. I mean, you haven't stood still these years. You're always on the lookout for new things to do.
Yeah, and I've, as I say, I'm delighted that I've been quite successful, obviously most famously or notoriously with Atomic Kitten. I mean, people couldn't quite believe that the man from OMD actually created Atomic Kitten and wrote most of their first album. But I'll put Whole Again alongside Enola Gay and Joan of Arc as one of the songs I'm most proud of ever writing.
And it's a song that everybody, as soon as they heard it, thought they knew already, which is a great tribute. I mean, it's a great song.
Well, thank you. And running a studio as well in Liverpool gives me an opportunity to meet lots of young bands. Because my problem is, the first time is always the best, and I can't do that again now. So I kind of live vicariously in a sort of middle-aged vampire way off other young people's first times. So I quite enjoy it. Keeps
Lot
me
of young singers.
Yes.
And it's great to see you, and great success with the tour.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hawkwind and Silver Machine. Thanks to Andy McCluskey for choosing his tracks of his years. Fascinating fella.